You didn't thump down there?
I didn't thump no smooth machine. I was a good boy today. I was a good boy, I was. Hey, Dylan called me.
Just about the time you were thumping the soda machine.
Couldn't hear it, but you were banging on that machine.
Not banging on a machine.
Okay.
Recorder's on? Good. I was not thumping on the machine. I got it on the record.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the Lisbon Town Council workshop dated for January 28, 2014 at 6 p.m. to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilor Garrison?
Present.
Councilor Lunt?
Here?
Councilor McTevier?
Here.
Councilor Bickford?
Here.
Councilor Ward will be late.
She'll be in just a few minutes.
All right, and Councilor Pesky?
Here.
And Councilor Brunel?
Here.
The first item on the agenda for the workshop is
Yes,
the
please.
executive search proposal presentation with Maine Municipal Association, David Barrett.
Hopefully I won't gum up the electronics up here. Good evening. Thank you for having me down to Lisbon tonight to talk to you about your executive search process. My name is David Barrett. I'm the Director of Personnel Services and Labor Relations at Maine Municipal Association. Part of our organization's service program for municipalities in the HR department is to help councils and boards do a recruitment for a new town or city manager. I also spend a lot of my time representing towns doing collective bargaining, working with the council or board of selectmen on their behalf to negotiate their collective bargaining agreements. Beyond that, I'm director of personnel for our staff at the MMA office, and I'm responsible to take care of all of those activities as well. I started at MMA amazingly in 1985, and I'm still there a long time ago. We do, on average, probably 6 to 8 searches a year, assisting various size communities. Elected officials look for a new town or city manager. I have 2 currently going at the moment. New Gloucester is almost done, and I'm just starting in Skowhegan a couple of weeks ago. The proposal I have in front of you is our standard outline of the service that we provide. I thought maybe what I would do is go through it fairly quickly, but give you the opportunity to stop me and ask me questions. It's important, I think, for me to tell you that this is just sort of the basic outline, and if you as a council have other things that you want to incorporate into the search process, that is perfectly fine and doesn't change the cost. It's just I want this to, it's your search, and it's important that you have it put together the way you need it so you can get the kind of outcome that you're looking for. The starting point would be a meeting with the council. It's called the needs assessment, and it's really an opportunity to do a couple of things. One is it allows the council as a group to start talking about, what your priorities are, what some of the issues are that you need to deal with, what's the 3 to 5 year game plan here, so that you can look for a manager who's got the skill set that's going to be able to do the things that you have coming up, so that you as a group can start to get some consensus about what kind of candidates you're going to be looking for. It also helps me because I don't live here, so I don't know the issues. And I talk to people on the phone when they call and say, "Hey, what's going on in Lisbon? What do I need to know? What are their priorities?" So it gets me up to speed as much as I can about what some of your issues are. At that meeting, we would talk about where to advertise. Talk a little bit about the schedule of events and sort of the timing of the whole thing, and discuss whether or not the council's going to do this by themselves or whether there's going to be any participation by some other people in the process, and we would be able to have a conversation about that as well. Once that meeting is over with, I'll draft an advertisement, run it by you, and then place it in the various media outlets that we talk about at that first meeting and get the process started. The resumes come to our office. We respond to each one of them with an electronic communication saying, we've got your materials, so that people aren't calling the town office and bugging them about what's the status of the search. Once the deadline for submitting resumes has passed, then I'll review all the resumes that we get and do some categorization of them to help you save some of your time. Depending on how many we get, I'd break them into different categories. A top group of people who look like they're really strong candidates, a middle group of people who have some of the skills and abilities but not all of them, and then probably a bottom group of people who just don't have what you're looking for or the skill set necessary to do the job. I do that to help you save time. If you want to read them all, you can have them all. Councils choose very different paths on that. And obviously it's a function of how many you get. I mean, if it's a smaller number, I probably don't want to give you 2 piles. But my goal is not to screen down to 6 so that you have 6 people to choose from. My goal is to screen down to 20, maybe, so that you get to see some of the variety of choices and some of the different kind of candidates that are out there. You know, the mix of candidates you're going to get is going to be very wide, and people who have other jobs have skills that translate to this job. So it's important for you to see those, and it's important just generally for you to know what's out there and get some perspective on the types of people available. Our next meeting then would be after you received the resumes and had some time to look at them. We'd reconvene, go through the resumes with the goal of picking out the candidates you want to invite to Lisbon for an interview. We take care of all the logistics of being in communication with them, scheduling them in, and then prior to the interviews would mail to each of you or to the town hall in a big box notebooks for you to have during the interviews, and those notebooks will have all the resumes of the people who are coming, the schedule of events, questions to ask that you can use during the interview process, a list of questions not to ask so we don't get ourselves in any trouble during the process, and you'd have that in advance so you could take it home and do some homework before we actually interviewed people. I'll be present for the interviews to help you do those. Once that happens, you'll have a chance to discuss those candidates, and if there are a couple people in there that you want to do second interviews with, then we can talk about what that might look like and when we might want to do it. If you need to see some more people, then obviously you can make that decision as well. And then be present for the second interviews and do background and reference checking at the same time so that we can get that taken care of. And then when you ultimately make a decision, help you draft an employment agreement or whatever kind of document you want. And obviously, I think Roger would probably want to take a look at that at some point as well before you all signed it. But we certainly have lots of different kinds of employment agreements in the office that you could use as a model. So that's sort of the basic outline. Generally speaking, it's probably 12 to 16 weeks maybe. And some of that is depending on how much notice that your successful candidate has to provide to their current employer if they have one, or how much time it's going to take them to relocate to Lisbon and get here.
Do you have any questions from council for Mr. Barrett?
If we put together our own board of people to overlook some of these applicants, would you be willing to work with that board? I mean, a board made up of some of you and some other people? Right.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah. I just, the one thing that if you do that, and we would talk about this at that first meeting, but one of the things that is really, really, really important is you guys understand the confidentiality of executive sessions and of the documents that you see and all of that. Lay people might not have that same knowledge base built in. This is a very confidential process. Everything you do from not the next meeting, but the meeting after that when you're reviewing resumes, everything you do is an executive session, and those are nothing you have is a public document. If we invite citizens to participate, they have to understand that and sort of buy in, because the worst thing that you can have happen is names start to float around, people withdraw in droves, and then all of a sudden you're stuck. So if we do that, we just have to make sure we walk people through that.
Right.
Any other questions from council?
Mr. Barrett, I apologize for my car trouble.
That time of year.
Yeah. I was just wondering how you would characterize the services that MMA would provide as opposed to, or how they're different from, like Municipal Resources or Eaton and Peabody or another organization like that.
I know all those folks really well, and I respect the work that they do. I've known some of them for a very long time. We've been doing this for a very long time, and I have never been part of one of their searches, but I kind of understand, and I've seen the proposals that they do, and they're this proposal more or less. So I think everybody is providing a relatively similar kind of service. I think our advantage is that people know who we are, and when they see MMA on an ad, they know where, they know where to find us and call for information and process questions. So I think that's an advantage. But again, I think everybody who you have a proposal from is certainly qualified and capable of doing this.
Any more questions for Mr. Barrett? I just have a couple questions real quick. On a community like Lisbon, how many applications would you expect that we would receive?
It varies widely depending on geographics and size and things like that, but New Gloucester just was very, not very far away from here and smaller than you, got 63, which is a pretty good number. The last one I just finished was Kennebunkport, which is obviously a different place than here, both geographically and in other ways. And they had, I think they were in the mid-60s as well. So that's a number that I wouldn't be surprised to see.
And you said you'd like to bring 20 to the elected body to review?
It depends. It's not a hard and fast number. I mean, if there are 25 that look spectacular, you're going to get 25. If there are 18, it'd be 18. But again, my point in doing that is to not do your screening for you. I want you to be able to read some of these. I want to make it easier for you by saying these are the really good ones, these are the almost really good ones, and these are people who probably can't do this job, so you can have an easier time doing it. But I think it's really important both for you to see what else is out there, but also for the citizens to know that you got your skin in the game and you're doing this. I think that's an important thing as well.
And then my other question is, do you guys advertise in confidence for the applicants or no?
Well, in Maine, applications are not public records. Unlike Florida, where people applying for a town manager job in Florida, the list is out daily of who applied.
Yeah.
So we don't release names. For the press calls, we would say, they have 30 so far. They're from all over the country. Give them something to write about. But we're not ever releasing any names to anybody, and that's one of the things that is important. Once you and the citizens, if there are any who are participating, again, that it's really important to keep that going.
In your experience, what type of do you see interviewing committees that have citizens involved, department heads or town employees? What do you see typically works the best when you're interviewing applicants?
When I first started doing this, it was exceedingly rare that boards and councils supplemented their ranks with other people. Now it is more common than not. It really happens in two ways, potentially. One is to have those people participate in the first round interviews, so they get to see the 6 or 8 people that you are interviewing, get to participate, give you their insight on those people, and then you finish the process off from there. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is for you to do first round interviews, get down to finalists, and then bring in other people to interview the finalists, whether it's 2 or 3 people, so that it's a more focused, we're down to the last couple, we want your input, so we set up something for them to do it that way. Those are the really 2 common ways to do it, but as I said, it's much more common today to do this than it used to be, certainly.
Great. Any other last questions, Mr. Barrett from council? All right, well, seeing none, thank you very much for taking time to come out and talk with us. I know personally I'm not an expert when it comes to hiring a town manager, and really appreciate you taking time to come and visit us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate
you.
it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And the next item
Yes,
is
please.
department presentations, the assessing department by William Van Tynen.
There's a few people on the council that I have not met before. I'm Bill Van Tynen. I work on your tax assessments.
I'll get it for you.
And since the last time I was here at a council meeting, I have a new knee joint. So I kind of got a new lease on life, I think. It's been working out real well, and I haven't been here a great deal because in the last couple of months because I've been recovering from that surgery. Now, I'm very much a novice at using this PowerPoint software, so if you could bear with me a little bit, I would very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
First of all, the tax assessment function is substantially regulated by state law. We have to maintain tax assessments, develop the tax rate, maintain our exemptions and lots of records according to standards set in state law and administered by the agency that's known as Maine Revenue Services. It's a local function, but it has to be done according to the laws of the state of Maine. And I would say that our main function is to try to maintain your tax assessments equitably and fairly according to Maine state law.
Want to hit slideshow?
I'm sorry.
You have to hit slideshow at the top.
There we go. How do I go to the next one? Pardon me? Space bar.
Big one in the middle.
I'm sorry?
You keep hitting the space bar, it'll just keep going.
Keep. Oops.
There you go, hit the backspace. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much for your help. So I've really tried to make a reasonably comprehensive list of all the responsibilities, the functions that we do in the tax assessment office. And one of the things we have to do is keep track of who owns what. We have to review all the deeds that come into the town office and make sure that we have the right owner assessed for the correct property. So we get the records from the Registry of Deeds, and we have to update our owner records throughout the year so that each year we're taxing the record owner as of April 1st. April 1st is the tax assessment date in the state of Maine. We have to update our property records each year for any newly created lots, either by split, where someone sells a portion of what they own, or by subdivision, where there's an approved plan approving a certain configuration of new lots. I've mentioned that we also have to maintain ownership records on mobile homes. You have a substantial number of mobile homes in town, and when mobile homes transfer from one person to another, they're not documented with a deed if they aren't associated with any land, like a typical home or other real estate property would be there. So we have to maintain the ownership records for those properties in a different way. Consult with the mobile home parks and try to make sure that we are taxing the mobile homes to the correct owner. We have to update the valuation of the real estate in town annually for all kinds of changes. New houses, additions to houses, deterioration of houses, any change that's a fire, any change that's significant, we have to update the real estate valuation of the properties in town. We have to maintain and update the tax maps of the town. In your case, we make some preliminary changes on our tax maps and we send them to a company called John O'Donnell Associates. It may be changing in the future, and they draft the changes on the permanent maps. We maintain maps and plans that are relevant to the town. And this is something really we're taking a strong interest in right now, because those maps and plans that are relevant to the town have been a little bit, they're probably all there, but they're a little bit chaotic. They're just in plan files, they're not indexed, and we're trying to organize them in a easier to retrieve fashion than they have been maintained in. We have to update the valuation of the town for business equipment changes that occur annually. Additions of equipment, deletions of equipment, ongoing depreciation, businesses that close, businesses that open up. Taxable business property includes store fixtures, machinery and equipment in a business, restaurant equipment in a restaurant, those types of things. And pursuant to that, we send a request for information every year pursuant to what's called Title 36-706, which allows assessors to make a request of a taxpayer to provide a listing of their property. So we send a request to businesses and we ask them for a listing of their personal property or a listing of changes that they've made to their personal property. We monitor sales data throughout the year. In the state of Maine, when real property sells, there's a deed that records the ownership change, and there's what's called a real estate transfer tax declaration, which documents the sales price and any special circumstances that might be related to that sale. So we have to maintain information on all the sales that occur in the town each year. We also review and process applications for the business equipment tax exemption, and we maintain the value of that exempt property in the same way we do the taxable property. In 2007, the state legislature enacted this exemption. It applies to new personal property put in place, I think it's after April 1st, 2007. It's exempt from taxation with a fairly simple application for qualified property. Doesn't apply to retail property, but it does apply to manufacturing property. And you get reimbursed a portion of the lost taxes from that business equipment tax exemption. So it's important that we maintain the exemptions. It's important that we maintain the values so that we can calculate the amount of reimbursement and receive that reimbursement from the state. We respond to taxpayer inquiries on a number of things, whatever they ask. I mean, people are interested in what's taxable, what's not taxable. They have questions about their valuations, about exemptions that they might be entitled to, how to apply for certain things that they might be entitled to, like how to apply for a veteran's exemption or how to apply for tree growth taxation or various things like that. So we have a lot of interaction with taxpayers on essentially an informal basis. We finalize the annual valuation of the town each year, and that's the basis of your tax commitment. And the assessor calculates the tax rate and commits the property taxes. And several times over the years, I've gone over the tax commitment process line by line with the council. But basically, it entails totaling up the appropriations for the town that the town needs to meet. One of those is your budget, the town budget. Another is the school budget. And a third is the amount that needs to be raised for Androscoggin County. And probably the easiest is Androscoggin County, because they simply send you a warrant that says you need to raise X amount by property taxes for the fiscal year for Androscoggin County. We have to deduct for certain things that are going to be paid by something other than property taxes, and that's going to include state municipal revenue sharing. That is some level of money that has been received over the years that has to be used for reducing property taxes in a town. Another thing we need to deduct for is excuse me, other revenues that you have budgeted for in your budget. So you're going to anticipate certain revenues to be received during the year, excise taxes, recreation fees, user fees for various things, fines that might be collected, all those kinds of revenues that are not from the property tax. We also have to calculate the amounts that need to be raised for captured assessed value in some tax increment finance districts that you have. Those captured assessed values and the taxes from them are used for a special purpose other than regular property taxation. In your case, most of them are used for credit enhancement, where you made a decision in the past to assist the business with its expansion or its development by refunding a portion of the taxes to the property owner. And one of the tax increment finance districts, you capture revenue to assist with the operation of your economic development office. We also have to estimate the amount of revenue that's expected to be received in reimbursement from the state for two things: the Betty reimbursement, the business equipment tax exemption, and the homestead tax exemption. We have that all done. The calculation for the tax rate is dividing the amount to be raised by taxation, the net amount after the deduction of revenue sharing and other revenue, by the total taxable valuation of the town. And that's the basis every year of how much each person is taxed. There's a tax rate that's uniformly applied to all the property in town, and it's multiplied by the taxable assessed value of each account, whether it's real estate or taxable business equipment. Other things that we do are responding to abatement applications. The process in the state of Maine is that a property owner can dispute their valuation by requesting in writing a tax abatement. In a tax abatement request, the owner is expected to quantify the amount of reduction in taxable valuation that they believe they are entitled to and explain the reasons why. A taxpayer can request an abatement within 6 months of the date of commitment of taxes, and the assessor needs to respond to that abatement request and either grant it, not grant it, or perhaps grant a portion of what was requested. We have to defend disputed valuations in the appeals process. If the abatement is not granted, or if the abatement is granted in a lesser amount than the taxpayer requested, the taxpayer can appeal the decision of the assessor to your local Board of Assessment Review, and it's our responsibility, the assessor's responsibility, to try to defend the valuation in that appeals process. There's a couple of exceptions to the general rules of taxation, various types of current use taxation, and one of those is the tree growth tax law. People who own forest land that's used for some commercial production of forest products can apply for and be taxed at a tree growth valuation for their wooded land. Those rates are set by the state of Maine annually. We have to maintain those applications, value the property appropriately for the portion that is classified as tree growth. There's some periodic refiling requirements, so we have to maintain information on what those refiling requirements are and see that the taxpayers refile in a timely manner. There's two other types of current use taxation. One is farm taxation. You have a few properties in the town that are classified farmland, and under the farm tax, we have to maintain those applications. We have to appropriately value the property as farmland for the portions that are classified as farmland. Without really any regard to its development potential, but strictly at an agricultural use value as farmland. And then there's another form of taxation that's under current use called open space taxation. And we have to maintain the paperwork, the applications for that, and appropriately value land as open space land. There's a couple of different ways to value open space land, but the most common way that I suspect 95% of the assessors in the state of Maine utilize is to value the property according to the regular land schedule with some adjustments that are allowed in the state law. So if somebody just, for example, minimally qualifies for open space, it would be a 20% reduction. If they apply for open space and they qualify, plus they allow public use of the property, let's say for hiking or swimming or outdoor recreation of some type, then it's an additional 25% reduction. If the land is forever wild, if it's protected from development forever, and it's going to maintain itself as open space land forever, it would be a much greater reduction in value than the first example or two that I gave you. We have to review and maintain exemption applications and records and maintain it in our tax assessment system so people receive the proper exemptions. In tax assessment in the state of Maine, taxation is the rule. Exemption is the exception to the rule. Most property is taxable. Exceptions to that apply to certain organizational properties or institutional properties. Churches, houses of worship are exempt from taxation. The United States government, the state of Maine, is exempt from taxation. The town of Lisbon is exempt from taxation. Certain charitable institutions are exempt from taxation. They have to apply for the exemption. It's not automatic, and they have to show that they meet the requirements of the statute to have that exemption. And certain literary and scientific organizations are exempt from taxation. if there was a private school that was a nonprofit school, and it was teaching college students or even elementary students, that would probably qualify for the institutional exemption as a literary and scientific institution. Individuals can qualify for a few exemptions. Very few would qualify for a total exemption unless it was a very low-value property. In the state of Maine, if you live in a homestead as your residence, and you make out a simple application and you demonstrate that you are a resident of the town and that you occupy that house, you can obtain a homestead exemption. That exemption is a $10,000 exemption if the town maintains its assessments at 100% of value. If it's at less than 100% of value, that exemption should be multiplied by the town's assessment ratio. Another exemption exists for qualified veterans. Not every veteran qualifies for an exemption, but wartime veterans who have reached the age of 62 qualify for an exemption. The exemption is, I believe now $6,000 multiplied by the assessment ratio of the town. Certain disabled veterans who are 100% disabled and essentially are a paraplegic veteran can qualify for a much larger exemption, but most veterans just qualify for that $6,000 exemption. Unremarried widows of veterans who, if the veteran was still alive and qualified for the exemption, the widow qualifies for the exemption. There's also an exemption for blind individuals, and that's a $4,000 exemption. There's not too many exemptions that exist for individuals. The three that I gave you are the ones that exist in the state of Maine. We have to complete several reports and submit them to Maine Revenue Services each year. One of those reports is called the Municipal Valuation Return, and that's a comprehensive summary of the valuation of the town and the tax rate calculation. On that, we have to report a detailed listing of parcels under, or acreages under tree growth, under farm. We have to report all the exemptions that exist in the town. We have to report any property that's captured in tax increment finance districts. We've got to summarize the number of new houses that were built and what the valuation of those new houses are. Lots of detailed information has to be compiled and submitted to Maine Revenue Services in that annual municipal valuation return. And I would say that it serves two primary purposes from the viewpoint of Maine Revenue Services. It makes sure that the town is reasonably complying with state law and state requirements. And also it gives them information that's relevant for them in helping them get information to do the equalized state valuation of each town each year. Another document that we have to complete is often referred to as a sales turnaround report. Maine Revenue Services monitors all the property that sells in each town, and they give each town a detailed summary listing of the sales that occurred in the last fiscal year. And they ask that the town add to that list our land valuation, our building valuation, our total valuation of each one of those sales, and notes on any reasons why those sales would not be considered arm's length sales. A sale from a father to a son or any other close relative to another close relative would be, not be considered an arm's length sale because of the family interconnection. A foreclosure sale would usually be considered a distress sale rather than an arm's length sale. So they ask that we point out any reasons why it wouldn't be a good idea to regard a sale as an arm's length transaction. We have to complete an annual ratio declaration and homestead exemption report. You are reimbursed for 50% of the lost revenue from the homestead exemption. The homestead exemption was enacted, I believe, in 1998, and where it was a new exemption, the state has to reimburse you for at least 50% of the lost revenue from the exemption. And so we have to give them, before we even commit taxes, our best estimate of the homestead exemptions that we're going to have in the town and what we're going to use for an assessment ratio for the town. So if you are not at 100%, you would be declaring a ratio of less than 100%, and they're going to use that ratio to adjust the $10,000 exemption to the appropriate exemption at that certified ratio. We provide a lot of information to people who have a need to get tax assessment information, appraisers, people who are doing a development proposal and need to notify abutters. All kinds of people have a need to get certain information. They need to know who owns the property next door or who owns the property in this area where I'm doing a survey. So we provide a lot of information from the tax assessment office to people who have a desire and a need to get that kind of information. And we meet at least annually with Maine Revenue Services to provide them with information that they need to compute the equalized state valuation of the town. And I'm going to digress a minute and just explain what that is. We maintain a local valuation. That's what we use to commit our taxes. Not every town assesses at exactly the same percentage of value. Some towns have recently updated their valuations. They're at 100% of value. Some towns are quite dated in their assessment records. They're assessing at much less than current value. And it's important in intergovernmental funding that not each town's valuation be accepted at face value. So the state does a process called maintaining an equalized state valuation, where they make adjustments to the local valuations based upon primarily sales ratios. They develop a sales ratio to indicate that you're at 80% of value or 100% of value or 70% of value, and they would make adjustments to your own valuations to bring them up to 100% of value. The purpose of that is, for example, when you pay a county tax, it's based on your valuation as a part of the county. So that it's important that all those valuations be brought up to the same level, or it wouldn't be fair to assess a town according to its own valuation if it's out of sync with the valuation of other valuations in the county. So that's something that's a state responsibility, and it's very important for funding among towns. I'm also going to give you a brief update on the revaluation project. I'm conducting a revaluation project at the town as a contractor for the town. It's being done over a 4-year period of time. We're doing about a quarter of the work each year. We're in our 3rd year right now. And the revaluation consists of several phases. Some of you probably are sick and tired of hearing me on this, but I know there's a couple of new members, so I want to touch the bases a little bit. A real fundamental phase of the revaluation is collecting information on each and every property in the town, each and every building in the town. So we visit the buildings, we collect information about all the relevant characteristics of the property, from foundation to interior finish, story height. We make a sketch of the property. We take a photograph of the property. And at the current time, we've measured and listed about 2,500 houses in the town of Lisbon. Another phase of the revaluation is really directly related to the measuring and listing. We try to get into as many homes as possible. You obviously don't reach people at home every time you knock on a door. So we make repeated efforts to get inside, and we're doing a lot of that right now. I don't know whether you've noticed, but it's relatively cold outside, and it's hard to take pictures and walk on the ice and measure buildings. So it's a good time for us to make second and third knocks on the door, leave a letter, and say that we've been there, and we would appreciate it if they could call us and make an appointment so that we could do the interior inspection if it's okay with them to allow that. Another phase of the revaluation is to analyze the sales in the town. We're working with a software product called Trio Software. It's the town software for a number of municipal functions. And we'll be developing and are developing appraisal schedules for building costs, building depreciation, land values that work within that Trio system. And we do that analysis primarily with sales ratio analysis, where we test our schedules to see how, when we apply them to the information we've collected in the field, they measure up according to the sales. It's a trial and error method. You test, you retest, you modify, you retest, you modify, until you have as good a synchronization between assessed valuations and sales prices as you can obtain. So that's a step. We do data entry, and our data entry is just a little bit lagging behind our data collection, our measuring and listing at this point. So we enter all the information that we've collected in the field in a computer system that records it, keeps it, and applies that information, applies the appraisal schedules that we've developed to that information that we input in the computer. Inputted into the computer is also a digital sketch and a digital photograph, so that the sketch and the photograph is all in the computer system and linked to the property record card. We do a review. We don't trust that everything's going to go correctly the first time. We enter the data. We try to make sure we enter it accurately, but we also do a review where we check the valuation of each and every property to try to make sure that it's reasonable, that it's reasonably accurate, and that it relates reasonably to the sales that we have studied in our analysis from the town of Lisbon. We also try to make sure that property values are done consistently, that our data is accurate, and that similar property is valued in the same way. And then the last phase of the revaluation, which we would be trying to get done in the spring of 2015 so that we can implement all the new valuations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2015, is a notification and hearing process where we will notify all the owners of property in Lisbon that's taxable of their new proposed assessed valuation, and we will give them an opportunity to meet with us to review how their valuation was calculated, ask questions about it, make comparisons with their property and other if they have that kind of a question. And we'll note any issues that are outstanding and try to follow up on them and inform the owner of any changes that result in their valuation as a result of that review. So I've tried to go over with you really two things. A regular tax assessment function that goes on every single year, and the project that we're currently working on for completion in 2015. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have questions, I'll certainly try to answer them.
Any questions from council for Mr. Van Tynen?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, Bill, you said you did 2,500 buildings so far total. You've been inside and measured and stuff. How many buildings total are there in Lisbon?
I believe there's just in the neighborhood of 3,050 to 3,100.
Thank you, Bill. Just trying to get an idea of how close you are to being done. So you're pretty good along the ways.
If I gave you the wrong number, I'm sorry. I may not have it at my fingertips. When I calculated it before, we're about 70%.
70% of the
Maybe
way
I
done,
gave you the
okay.
wrong number.
Okay, but roughly you're 70% of the way done. Okay.
Bill, currently we're what, at 70% value? Ballpark?
No.
No.
Let me give you a little background. A number of years ago, you were down to a ratio in the low 60s. And I forget exactly what year that might have been. That might have been 2009, 2010, thereabouts. And you did a bit of an update a few years ago. Perhaps it was 2010, maybe it was 2011, I can't remember exactly, where properties were indexed upward to try to get a ratio of about 80%. So there was one year where you were very, very substantially at 80%. And now, with some deterioration in the market, at least up to the last time we did an analysis, you're at about 85 or 86%.
So come 2015, we expect to be at 100?
That's correct.
So if somebody's property goes up more than about 15%, that's when they should start wondering if it's all.
Yeah. I mean, what the last time you had a revaluation, I believe, was in the neighborhood of 1989, a long time ago. And I don't know precisely what kind of a re-inspection program you undertook here and there over the years. But I believe that the last time properties were comprehensively inspected in a compressed time frame was 1989. Some properties I certainly would expect, from my experience working everywhere else, have incrementally been upgraded a bit. Maybe in levels that don't precipitate the assessor's attention, like putting a new roof on, maybe replacing 5 years after that the siding, maybe replacing some windows, maybe doing some interior remodeling, but not something that's substantial enough to provoke the assessor to say, I've got to knock on that door and take a look at that property, because it happens a little bit at a time. But it might be a bit of a transformation, but it just occurred in little enough steps that it didn't provoke a reinspection. Likewise, I am sure that there are some properties that were in pretty good shape physically in 1989, and very little has been done. Maybe it's deteriorated. Maybe the roof started to leak, and it's taken its toll. So you're going to have changes. I mean, no individual property has, or certainly the vast majority of individual properties are not exactly what they were in 1989. Some have incrementally gone up, some have incrementally gone down.
One other question. When you talk about an interior inspection, what does that exactly entail? I know because you've already done my house, but just for the folks that are listening.
Well, on the outside, we list the type of roof, we list the story height. We fine-tune the story height sometimes when we go inside because it's not as obvious as it appears maybe from the outside. We list the type of siding. We measure the building, and we sketch the building, and later on, we put that sketch into the computer system. On the inside, we look at the extent of the basement. We look at the type of foundation. Often you can tell the type of foundation from the outside. We try to count the number of rooms. We try to count the number of bathrooms and list those details. We make some notes about the quality of the house. Is it an average mass-produced house? Is it a custom-built, individually designed house? Is it a lower-cost house than either one of those categories? Something that is a functional house, but not built with quite average materials and workmanship. We make some listing about the quality of the kitchen, quality of the bathroom, the type of heating system. We try to list really the same kinds of things that we would expect most people shopping for a house would be noting about the property that they're looking at and they're inspecting and trying to weigh against others as they make a decision to buy or make an offer.
Thank you, Bill.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Van Tynen, for taking time to come in and talk with us this evening. I know there's a lot of great information there, and I took a lot away from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On these reevaluations that you're doing, so if my neighbor and myself have the same square footage of house. My neighbor and I have the same fixtures and same amount of bathrooms. But my neighbor, he don't keep his place up, and I do. So I'm going to be taxed more money because I keep my place up and my neighbor doesn't? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
If to a certain degree, I am.
See, to me, that doesn't... Apparently, I've been shunned. So...
I'm just asking you to let Mr. Van
If-
Tynen answer
if,
the question before you continue.
If the kind of thing that you're talking about is housekeeping, is one house is kept immaculately and well-furnished, is clean, and another house is messy on the inside and cluttered. I don't think that type of thing is going to have any consequence in the valuation of the house. But if one house is peeling paint and the next house is a well-painted house, if one house has a shingle roof that where the shingles are deteriorating and it looks like that thing could start to leak any day, and the other roof is 4 years old and in good shape, that type of difference in the condition of the structure itself is going to affect the valuation of each house, and one is going to be valued higher than the other. And that's consistent, as I said earlier, we have to comply with state law, and state law is that assessments will be maintained in proportion to the value of the real estate. So if there is a substantial difference in the physical condition of one house compared to another, that's a very relevant characteristic that we have to take into consideration.
Thank you for your answer.
I think it's straightforward. I mean, I didn't try to dance around it.
I don't look for dancing partners.
Okay.
Any other questions from council before we move on? See none. Thank you very much.
All righty. Bear with me while I disconnect, all right?
Do you want to do it here or here? Twyla, before we do move on to the next presentation, I'm just going to hand over this meeting to Councilor or Chairman Ward for the remainder of our session this evening.
Okay.
Thanks.
We're going to maintain our current position in our seating.
So the next item is the Recreation Department presentation by Mark Stevens.
I'd like, if you could, Mr. Lunt, Mr. Garrison, spin your chairs around, and you don't have to look at me.
Mark, can I ask you a favor?
You sure can.
Make sure you use the microphone, because I have a hard time hearing today.
How's this?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Brought my projector from home. The one here is a little outdated. I hope to give you a brief description of what the Recreation Department's been doing throughout the year. I would encourage anyone to ask any questions, stop me as I go along. But I really want to basically scrape the surface of what we actually do, because I could spend 15 minutes talking about what we do for the Moxie Festival. This is an annual presentation for you. Okay. In this presentation, I'm going to define our department's mission. I'm going to provide some financial history. I'm going to introduce you to our greatest assets, our staff, our work. I will talk about our facilities and merely scratch the surface of our programming and events. We have so many. I'll talk about the benefits of our committees, boards, and associations. And finally, I'll talk about our vision. And as you'll see throughout the presentation, I have put some pictures in there to try to bring the presentation to life. Our mission was written in 1993 and was revised in 2005 by the Recreation Committee and the Rec Department. But our mission is, the department is committed to providing our community residents with outstanding service, recreational programs, facilities that create leisure opportunities in a safe and healthy environment, which meet the needs of our participants and enhances their quality of life. It's an interesting slide. I want to share with you a little bit of history. In 1993, the Recreation Department was transferred from the school department over to the town. Not a lot of people remember that, but my office was actually in the Sugg Middle School closet when I first was hired in 1993. Now it's a food storage closet. During that year, The Recreation Department's budget was $68,000. If you look in the highlighted box to the right, our annual budget was $68,000. Our annual revenues collected were $13,825, and that gives us a difference after you subtract the revenues from the overall budget of difference of $55,000, or 20% paid by user fees. Now, as we went through the next several years, you can see in 2007, this was the same year that the Recreation Department grew. We got a community center given to us by the school. Our overall budget was $144,000, and you can see our user fees, our revenues were $51,000. It went up quite considerably. The difference was $93,358, or 35%. You can see that we're becoming more efficient as the years go by. Several years later, I go back to 2013, it was last year. If you look at overall budget, it was $211,000. It looks huge, but look at the user fees, $118,750. That's what was budgeted. We have actually received more than that. 2 years ago, we received $10,000 more, and we collected more than $10,000 than what was expected. And last year, I think we were right about $118,000, with a difference of $93,000, just under what we were collecting in 2007. Which means that for the tax burden for the town of Lisbon, we haven't really gone up since 2007. Our budget's increased, but it's because our revenues have and our programs have. All the programs we've started since 1993 have paid for themselves, and a bit more. At to date, we're 56% paid for by user fees, and I don't see why we can't continue to do that to become more efficient as the years go on. This next slide is our full-time staff. Myself and Sherry, we're the only full-time employees for the town of Lisbon Rec Department. And our part-time staff year-round is Jamie Martin, my assistant director, and Alyn Strout. Alyn's position was paid for by grants for the last several years, up until last year. She was the first year. This was the first year that she was actually paid from out of the budget. Our part-time temporary staff include our after-school recreation program and our preschool program. And we have several employees for our after-school program. We have about 40 to 50 kids every day after school. The school drops them off by bus at the MTM Center, and we watch them till 5:30. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into programming. Our preschool group is 3 and 4-year-olds, and those are our staff members, Jessica and Meekin and Jessica Hart. The rest of our staff, we have a lot of employees. If you look at the town report, you can see that we have anywhere between 50 and 60 employees, sometimes even more. And even all of those employees aren't listed because some of them are contracts, some of them are officials that you don't actually see their names in there. But we have our summer day camp supervisors and counselors. That's anywhere between 15 and 20 staff members. Our summer sport camp coaches, including track football, basketball, cheering, soccer, and tennis. Bus drivers. Co-ed softball coordinator. We have all of our instructors, our aerobics, Zumba, senior fitness instructor, are all contracted employees, meaning they get stipends, but they are still employees. We have our fall football and field hockey coaches. We run the middle school sports programs through the rec department. Our swimming supervisors, officials for football, field hockey, and even officials for the Moxie 5K. And of course, our janitorial staff. Training is very important for us at the rec department. We train all of our staff in first aid, CPR, and AEDs. For our summer staff, we train our employees 8 to 10 hours of video training. It's through expert online training. And some of this, the courses that they have to take and pass, they actually take a test and pass these courses, are advanced skills for working with difficult parents, working with the public, responding to first aid emergencies, becoming a youth development professional, cultivating patience, day camp dynamics, helping awkward children fit in, and there's one course called Rules Were Made to Be Positive. This is a snapshot of our staff. We had to, I challenged them to be creative in introducing themselves to other staff. This employee decided to stand up on his, he was already about 6.5 feet tall, but he stood up on the bench and introduced himself to everybody. We also train all of our our camp coaches. We highly encourage all of our coaches to be trained. This is for their benefit and also ours. It's for accountability for us and as far as insurance, but it's also, you know, if something ever happens where there's a discrepancy with how the coach has been coaching, we can always refer back. We have several contracts that we have people sign. We have a contract for parents, we have a contract for children, and a contract for coaches. And they all require them to sign the contract and really emphasizes good sportsmanship. I said we encourage them, but when it comes to football, football brings out a certain type of personality in people. It brings out the best in people. We have all of our football coaches mandatory trained. They have to go through some sort of youth sport training. They have to pass a test. It's a league requirement. We're the Central Maine Football League. And I brought our NAYS coaches program to the Central Maine Football League. And they adopted it and had all the other towns. There's several other towns that now mandate it for their coaches. Now, here's a list of our facilities on this slide. The Pinewoods Fields Sports Complex. We have 2 ball fields up there with a storage building. Our tennis courts at Lisbon High School. If you didn't know, we were responsible for maintaining those. The ice rink and the MTM Community Center. Now, I was doing this slide, I was thinking to myself that all of these facilities were given to us by the town. When they didn't want them, they gave them to me, or they gave them to the rec department. Back in '93, the tennis courts were in very bad repair. They were almost unusable, and the ice rink as well. And being a young and freshly graduated recreation director, I was excited about getting these facilities. After the years, I'm thinking, I don't know. But we do maintain them, and you know, the Pinewoods Fields were developed several years ago and are very heavily used, as well as the MTM Community Center. Here's a picture of our tennis courts after we resurfaced them in 2007. This past year, we did some renovations on our ice rink. We cut the boards from 4 feet to 2 feet, and really made our boards easier to maintain. We had high school civic action group. The seniors worked on this project this fall by helping our contractors that we hired to put these boards back together and get it skatable. This past Sunday, they had a public skating event scheduled through the high school seniors. The ice is great right now, by the way, if anybody is interested in skating. This is our Pinewoods ball fields. We have 2 ball fields. Every year requires some sort of maintenance. We spend about $1,500 per field to get it ready for playable. We have LJL using our fields and also co-ed softball. So I'd say 7 days a week. We spent a couple minutes talking about our community center. It's kind of taken a life of its own the last few years. And these are some of the things that you can expect when you walk through our doors. We have the Historical Society there. We have Laco Food and Clothing Bank. We have a fitness center that's grown to 3 rooms and over 200 current members. We've had several hundred members come in throughout the years that have been, when you sign up, you pay $10 a month, sign a form, agree to the rules, and go over maybe a 10 or 15-minute orientation with our staff, and then you're free to go. We also encourage all town employees that work for Lisbon including board members, to work out free of charge. It's a benefit to the town. We have seniors rooms. We have 3 senior rooms that heavily used. Yoga and karate room. We have our recreation offices there, obviously. We have the outside basketball courts, the beach volleyball courts, the pavilion that holds concerts in the parks, and we've even had 2 weddings in the park since I've been there. Playground and community, and actually we've been talking to the emergency management coordinator about making MTM a community shelter. Some things we need to do first, but there will be more on that later on. The regular groups that use our space over there, and that's what the building was originally set up for, was to be a place for civic groups to be able to go there and, you know, utilize the space there. Roy's Driving School, even though they're not a civic group, they have been a loyal facility renter of ours for the last several years. 3rd of Maine Infantry, they go there and they practice their thing. Lisbon Lobster Club, I don't know if anybody's a member of that club, but it's pretty exclusive, but we do allow them to use our kitchen to make the lobster stew. Positive Change Lisbon's there every month, a couple times a month. Lisbon Junior Athletic League. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts not only meet there, but they keep storage there. Our Seniors Plus of Androscoggin has Meals on Wheels at the MTM Center. Twin Dragon Karate rents room 12 from us. And Lisbon Crazy Quilters moved from Beaver Park several years ago over to the MTM Center, so they don't have to use the outhouse. And you know, of course, they have you know, a lot more room. And also the VFW, when they closed their building down last year because they couldn't afford it, they actually meet at the MTM Center now. And this is an interesting slide. When we were invited to the old high school, right before they turned it over to the Brunswick Housing Authority, we were invited to go and tour the place. And I looked down at the top floor and looked at the MTM Park and took this shot of the pavilion. I just thought it was cool, so I put it in there. What's going on right now? A couple things. We have ski trips to Sugarloaf. You can see the slides, the pictures. We have cribbage tournaments every Monday, even on holidays. If you drive by on Memorial Day, any holiday, that place is packed because people are really into their cribbage. We have something new last year. It's the second year we're doing this. Is the MRPA, which is Maine Recreation Park Association, and coordinated with the Red Claws. We do a hot shot contest, and Lisbon is a regional qualifier. In other words, other towns, Topsom, Brunswick, Lewiston, come to Lisbon, and they compete in the hot shot contest, which is held at Lisbon Community School on a Sunday. I think it's actually on a Saturday. And winners from that contest go on to compete at the state level and then the national level. And then we have our youth basketball. Youth basketball 7 days a week. We have over 100 kids playing. We have travel teams in an in-town league. Swimming classes at the Y, yoga classes, Zumba classes, aerobics. We're planning trips to New York City and Bermuda. Before and after school recreation, I was talking a little bit about that before. We have 40 to 50 kids every day coming after school. Our preschool play group, our senior luncheons and breakfasts, which are well attended, 70 to 80 folks every Friday that volunteers and our staff put on the meals. Fit for Life exercise classes, which are senior citizens chair aerobics. If you've never seen how that works, you might want to stop in some Tuesday or Thursday morning at 9 o'clock and check that out. It's pretty interesting. And we also provide lunchtime movies for our retired folks. Here's a snapshot of our meal, one of our meals. Now, this is where I'm going to be scratching the surface. We have a lot of programs that we do, and there's a lot of work that goes into these, but there's so many that I was told we only have 15 minutes in this presentation, so I'm going to try to go along. If you go onto our website, you can see that this brochure is actually available for everybody. But here's our programs, what we charge for the programs. If you have any questions, please stop me at any time. But these are our summer sport camps. This is a picture that a parent took during one of the games this past year. This kid in the middle from Winthrop is actually, his feet are on the ground. When I first looked at it, I thought he was jumping up, but he is a tall fourth grader. And I was really impressed with this third grader from Lisbon, had no fear, and was blocking him in the right position, right technique. Lisbon football is pretty good in our town and starts young. We start them in kindergarten, first grade. We do travel programs for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and we do the middle school 7th and 8th. We have over 120 helmets that we have to recondition every year, and you see that in our budget every year. Our day camps are very popular. We have over 100 kids in our day camps. We utilize the Lisbon Community School and the MTM School. And during these trips, during these summer camps, we offer trips to Funtown, to parks, beaches. This past year, we brought them whale watching. We bring them to museums and things like that. We're open from 8 o'clock to 5:30 every day through the summertime. Every year, I ask the staff to put on a Lisbon's Got Talent, and this is what they do. On the last day of the summer camp, we have a barbecue, or we'll have ice cream, and the kids have been practicing their events all summer long. It's pretty neat. Okay, this is something we started last year. We did movies in the park, and what it is basically, we got this projector. We use revenues. We used monies that we saved up and purchased this projector with some sound equipment, and started doing some movies in the park. Some of them were well attended. We're going to continue to do them. We buy the rights to the movies, which is very expensive. But last year we started getting sponsorships from local businesses to help pay for those the cost. There's about 250 people here this night, and this is what it looks like on a full screen. That's the moon above the pavilion. We have to start early because there's ordinances. We have to be done by a certain time, and we don't want to be out till 11 o'clock. So we start before sun sets, and we get done usually around 9:30. Here's some other things that we do, and I do want to just look at a couple of these. We actually sell Funtown, Splashtown discounted tickets through our office throughout the year. Our senior program, we offer trips to all over the place. Lancaster, Pennsylvania was one of them we just recently went to. Talked a little bit about our fitness center and hunter safety courses. We just started that this past year. We have hunter safety courses at the MTM Center now. Picture of our fitness center. Everything in there is still there. Our TV was stolen but was recovered by the Lisbon Police Department, thankfully. Okay, this slide right here shows most of our special events. We have the bottom shows our Moxie Car Show. Last year we raised about $6,000. This past year we raised about the same amount. Only in the second year, it's really taken off. We had over 200 cars last year. This summer is going to be our 19th annual 5K. It baffles me why people pay our department to run on public roads. Last year we had about 700 runners, and it keeps getting bigger every year. You can see the 2 events we do with DARE in the summertime. We have a huge bike rodeo. I think this has been going on for maybe 30 years. It's not just summer camp kids, it's all kids. The rec department sponsors with DARE. We give away 4 mountain bikes. If they show up at this bike rodeo, they'll put their name in a hat, and we draw 4 mountain bikes. And we also do night trips to Funtown, Splashtown. This was a great picture of our 2012 race. This is when we only had 500 runners. So my wife Gretchen getting the kids warmed up. We have about 100 kids in the kids run. They only run about a quarter of a mile. I don't make them run the whole 3.1. A picture of our car show this summer, past summer. Over 200 cars. These are volunteers for the Moxie Car Show. Some of them had to go earlier. I know Fern was one of our judges, along with Les Kane, but those guys weren't. No, Les is there, but Fern's not in there. This is something new we're going to do this year. This is our third big event for the Moxie Festival. We're going to do a bike ride. There's still a lot of planning involved, but we're planning on doing a 30-miler and a 50-miler. We're anticipating 150 to 200 bikers, cyclists. And our proceeds that we bring in will help pay for our MTM playground project. These are other new programs we're doing. We started a Lisbon Bike Club. Thanks. Last summer we did, we started late in the summer, but we had 2 or 3 Wednesdays where people just show up at MTM and they just took off riding, and it's basically trying to inspire others to just get out and ride. We're going to do it again this next summer. The Let's Go program is a new program that we're starting with our after-school rec program, and basically you'll see this in hospitals, a lot of community buildings, schools, and basically what it is, it's a commitment to for kids after school to be more healthy and more physical. The 5 is 5 or more servings of fruit and vegetables. The 2 is 2 hours or less recreation screen time. One is 1 hour or more of physical activity, and the 0 is 0 sugar drinks and offer more water and low-fat milk. We're going to be providing healthy snacks after school. We have them for 2.5 hours. A lot of those kids that show up haven't eaten since 11 o'clock in the morning. That's when school has their lunches in LCS. But that's something we're starting right now. The other new program we're doing this year is a Velocity Cheer program, K through 8 girls. We have 30 girls already signed up, and their first competition is this weekend. They've been training for 2 months. There's a picture of Don Fellows on the right. Can't recognize him with those glasses on. This group is also helping plan our Moxie bike ride event. You can see the beautiful sign in the background. It shows when our bike rides are and our Dare Funtown trip. This is our logo for our Sunshine Hill Seniors program. You see that on the back of our bus. Basically, when we brought our senior citizens to New York City, we stopped at Union Central Station and took the shot. I think we had like 30 folks. We brought them all home. We didn't leave anybody behind. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, this past fall. Boards and committees. The value of our boards and committees, the benefits that the rec department is involved in is obviously the recreation committee, the MTM board, some oversight, and a lot of ideas bouncing off each other from both of those monthly meetings. Very involved with the Moxie Festival Committee. The active community environment team was something that Jamel talked about at his presentation at the last council meeting from Healthy Androscoggin. And we meet once a month, and the Maine Recreation Park Association, and also the Lisbon Safety Committee. Our vision for the next year and up to 5 years is to create a more active culture by offering more physical activities for all ages and abilities, improve the walkway in front of the MTM Center, improve the electrical and heating at MTM, replace the old playground at MTM with a new creative playground structure, and utilize a walking trail in our planning for the programs for the future. I'd like to thank PW. We couldn't get it what we need to accomplish without Public Works, the Lisbon Police Department, including DARE, our town engineer. I've seemed to be calling him off for favors, and our volunteers are the backbone of our community, and also staff and town council for listening to my presentation. That's a picture I took last year at, after Nemo. That was the day we're supposed to have the Valentine's father-daughter dance, and we decided to cancel it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Keep up the good work.
Very impressive.
Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate, and I know the council joins me in this, the time that the department heads are taking to put together their presentations for us, because it's not only valuable for new members of council, but a lot of it is good reminders for those of us who've been on the council for a year or two. The next item,
Is to adjourn the workshop.
okay, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we're gonna have communications.
And then you can reopen the regular meeting.
As if she decides to.
Do you want to?
Oh, that's right, your audience.
All right, yep. Roger's reminding me that we do have, as a part of our new working rules, the opportunity for public comment. We have been going a little bit over time, so folks who do have comments, we want to make sure we hear them, but if we could just move them along, that would be great. Is there anyone who needs to ask any questions or ask for clarification? Great.
Can I make a comment from here? I just want to say what a remarkable job Mark has done and is doing with the recreation department. It's totally amazing for a small community like this to
Yeah.
have many programs and opportunities for all ages. It's just totally remarkable.
Thank you, Dot. I think we all agree that Mark's hard work, along with his department and all the good staff at the MTM, really make it an extra special place for Lisbon. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
A second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? We'll adjourn this workshop. We'll take a very, very brief break. And here's my 3-minute timer. We'll take a brief break and then come back for our special council meeting.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I won't run you over, I promise.